Can you hear me? Okay, I think we should start, even though there's not a lot of people. So my name is Sofia Almeida. I'm working as policy officer at WWF. Um, I would like to thank you all for being here in this morning. And I would like to extend our gratitude to the Ministry of Environment and Energy for hosting this event on food. At WWF, our mission focus on a wide range of critical areas, from protecting biodiversity, combating climate change, and promoting sustainable development. Today's event is dedicated to one of the most pressing issues of our time, the urgent need for food system transformation in Portugal. This topic sits in the intersection of climate, biodiversity, and human health, demanding collective action across sectors and disciplines. I'm happy to introduce our panelists that will guide this discussion. I will keep it brief because I will present them in more depth after. So Martina Fleckenstein is the Global Policy Manager for Food Practice at WWF International. Salvador Malheiro is the Chairman of the Committee on Environment and Energy. Francisco Carvalho, General and Innovation Coordinator at Laboratório da Paisagem in Guimarães. Together they will bring a lot of knowledge and experience to this critical conversation. So once again, I would like to thank you all for being here. I hope today's discussions inspire us to take bold and meaningful actions. Now, I would like to ask Martina to take the floor for her presentation. Okay.
Yes, thanks a lot, and also from me a very warm welcome. As mentioned, I'm with WWF International, but I used to work very long for Germany. And WWF, and I think, has decided some years back to put a focus on food. And food is now one of our seven global programs. And this also shows the urgency of connecting food, biodiversity, and climate. I will talk today about the National Strategy for Food System Transformation and give some insight on the Great Food Puzzle with reference to Portugal. WWF there are some technical problems. WWF has recently launched the 24 Living Planet report. And it's alerting because if you look at this report, we still see that we have not solved the huge problems. Besides climate change, it's the loss of biodiversity. We call this report a system in peril. And one of the driver for the biodiversity loss, for greenhouse gas emissions, and for land use change is unsustainable agriculture and food production. About 27 to 30% of the greenhouse gas emissions are coming from the food production. Food is using 70% of water. It's one of the main drivers for biodiversity loss. And 90%, and this was really shocking, of tropical deforestation is caused by unsustainable agriculture. And at the same time, our food system is not delivering the nutrition to people we need. So we are in the situation that we need to solve the big challenges, which is the transformation of our food systems. And I will explain later in my presentation that there is not one food systems, but there are different types of food systems which are very specific to different countries. We are here at the COP today, and it's a pleasure also to see that this is the third COP where we have explicit a Food and Agriculture Day. So the first one was in Sharm el-Sheikh. We had a Food and Agriculture Day in Dubai, in UAE, and we have here a Food and Agriculture Day. And this once again shows us that without transforming our food system, we will not solve and reach a 1.5 target. And at the same time, I'm coming back, and that's why I lost my voice, a little bit from Cali, from the Biodiversity Conference, where the loss of biodiversity and the linkage to food and agriculture was also very prominent. And it was also the first time that at a biodiversity COP there was an explicit day all dedicated to food and agriculture system. And if we want to achieve the global goals, once again, food system transformation is urgent. And if I talk about food system transformation, we know about the how and we know about the what. The what is we want to go for nature positive production, including agroecology and regenerative. It's about reduction of food loss and waste, and it's about changing our diets. The big challenge is, and that's the how to implement and how to transform on the ground. And in this context, once again, the reference to the global targets, the SDG, the national climate commitments, the NDCs, and the national biodiversity strategy and action plans. To deliver and to transform our food system, we need to consider an alignment also of climate, of biodiversity, and of the land desertification. And this year is very exciting months at the moment. So we have started with the Biodiversity Conference. We are here in Baku for climate, and in 2 weeks we will have in Riyadh the UNCCD, which is a conference on desertification. And talking about food systems, it's really important also to align all the three conventions and to have a more coherence in the implementation on the ground. And in this context, what will help us? And as WWF, with our national offices, with Portugal, and our other about 80 national offices, and with our global food program, we have developed a kind of guidance, which we called the global puzzle. We call it the Great Food Puzzle because we think it's not one solution, but it's a lot of bits and pieces. Bringing them together, they will help us to transform our food system. This Great Food Puzzle has identified, and that's what I mentioned before, that we don't have only one type of food systems, but that we have several types of food systems. So in total, we have 6 types of food systems. And the one for Portugal, and I show it on the next slide, it's food system type 4. This means that all these countries, which you have seen on the map, and it's an interactive map on our website, they have at one hand key biodiversity areas, but an overall moderate concentration of biodiversity hotspots and a lower concentration of irrecoverable carbon. A lot of is industrialized agriculture, but also a lot of smallholders. And Portugal is also a country which produces a lot of food also for the people living in Portugal. And as you have seen, and all this food production is under high pressure considering climate change. So we have more droughts, it's getting hotter, we have a lot of wildfire, so all keeps pressure on food production, which has negative impact also in the economic growth in your country. The system of this great food puzzle, and you see these are all the puzzle pieces. We have identified 20 puzzle pieces which are general for all countries. We have divided this in natural resource management, in governance, in education knowledge, technology, in trade, and in finance. And what makes this methodology, the science-based methodology, very interesting is that we know it's type 4, and for type 4 countries, these are the most important levers for food system transformation, which means in general it's optimized land use, which means also changing agriculture production from a very intensive production to a nature positive production. So agriculture with nature, also considering the water shortage. It's about restoring of biodiversity, and I only will pick out some of this one. It's about supporting smallholders, but it's also adopting high-tech methodology. So at the end, we also need innovation for agriculture. And we also need to generate the increase of public awareness. And one topic which is not only for Portugal, but is globally at the European level, is the redirection of subsidies, which has to do with the common agriculture policies. So this tool should really help member states and governments to identify the hotspots and the urgencies to transform food systems. And why is this important? This is important, and now I'm coming back to where we are here at the climate conference and where I come from, Cali. It's important because we need and we have to integrate food and agriculture in the climate agenda, which is the nationally determined contribution under the Paris Agreement, where the member states have now been asked to update their NDCs for the COP30 in Belém. And the second one is based on the global biodiversity framework, that the member states have been asked to develop their national biodiversity strategy and action plans. One tool which we have developed with partner, and you see here it's not only WWF, it's developed with UNEP, it's developed with FAO, is an interactive tool on the website which helps member states also to identify measures. It's based on 30 measures, and combined with the Great Food Puzzle, you could really focus in and figure out the most relevant measures to be implemented for the national determined contributions. We are in the process to develop a similar tool for the biodiversity strategy and action plans. And we have really want to align the two agendas. Because if we talk about restoration, restoration is soil, it's carbon capture, it's carbon sequestration under the climate agenda. But at the same time, restoration is target 2 in the global biodiversity framework, which is just one example. And that's also considering that finance is always a challenge. We have really to look how we could align these two global agendas and look for a joint implementation on the ground. And finally, I want to close with 4 asks. The first of all, and that's just to reiterate, to integrate agriculture and food system in global agendas and implement at national level. We are here, and you are maybe following up the discussion on the finance, so we need more climate finance also for the agriculture and food sector. I was just coming from the launch of a new initiative today from the Azerbaijan presidency, called Harmonia, which has one focus to support farmers on the ground, but also to scale up exactly this finance for the agri-food systems. As mentioned already, we need to look at the synergies, and we need a multi-stakeholder approach. All this has to be done in a whole of society approach. Thank you.
Hi. So I will try to make it brief brief for us to have some time to discuss. But keeping in mind what Martina just presented about the Great Food Puzzle, here in Portugal, our office decided to make a policy brief identifying the key priority actions for the food transition in Portugal. Um, contrarily, what people tend to think and believe, the Portuguese diet that people do, it's not so Mediterranean. Currently it's not so balanced. So we have a lot of foods like cakes, sweets, cookies, salty snacks. There are 20% of the daily caloric intake. And we have a lot of insufficient intake of plant-based foods. Over 56% of the population fails to meet the WHO recommendation. And these also have impacts on public health. As you can see, we have not only diabetes, but also pre-obese, a high percentage of pre-obese people and obese. And it's a leading risk factor in the loss of healthy life, leading to prolonged periods of life with reduced health and vitality. So, the Portugal food system landscape, just to give a brief overview. So agriculture accounts for approximately 2% of GDP, with a strong focus on exports like wine, olive oil, and fish. Agriculture contributes to water usage, of course, and greenhouse gas emissions. Droughts and water scarcity are growing challenges, not only in Portugal, but in Portugal and Spain, it's a main issue. And the health aspects I already mentioned. So, the key challenges that we as Portuguese face nowadays, it's of course climate vulnerability, droughts and erratic weather patterns that strain water resources and affect agriculture. The water scarcity itself, because agriculture consumes 80% of water, of the freshwater resources. Dependency on food imports. Although Portugal exports key products, as I mentioned, it's highly dependent on imports. So we are, like many other countries, very exposed to global supply chains vulnerabilities, like we saw during the pandemic. And we have, once again, the public health concerns that put a lot of pressure also on the government and on the budget for health issues. So, focusing on the learnings from the Great Food Puzzle, we decided to focus on the 10 key actions that for us were a priority. For this presentation, I decided to focus only in 5, but we can discuss the other one. And of course, you will have the policy brief available on our website, so you can check. So the first one that we need to focus is this one: restore nature and biodiversity. Even to keep, sorry, not to keep, but even to adopt the EU Nature Restoration Law that determinate that we need to restore 20% of terrestrial habitats, we need to change not only the way we eat, but especially the way we are producing our food. So we need, this is examples, and we can discuss, of course, but we We would need to promoting agroecology and regenerative agriculture to restore biodiversity. And we need to convert less productive areas into natural habitats to support biodiversity conservation. The other one is public procurement. We need to include sustainability into public procurement process to promote sustainable food systems. This means include sustainability besides the price in the public procurement, because currently the criteria that decides the contracts, it's the price, and it's very important, but we need to rethink this process in order to include other criteria. The other one is support smallholders. This one is a very common suggestion. As Martina mentioned, we need to reform agriculture development programs and market organization and fisheries to empower small producers. The other key aspect for us is to enhancing data collection and transparency, because we need to direct public funding to improve data collection and measurement of Portugal, not only to measure consumption habits, but also to include different environmental impacts of food systems. This will allow us to create better action plans if we have all the data we need, all the recent data, and a more wide range of criteria of data. Sorry for the title, but the other one is redirecting subsidies and supporting nature-based solutions. Before Martina talked about the PAC, CAP actually, and this is the thing we defend is this need to shift subsidies from harmful agro-food practice to support the production of nutritious, nature-friendly foods and increase investment risk and nature-based solutions. Just to give you some numbers, from the CAP, only 3.5% is allocated to risk prevention, and the overall budget, 96%, is used for damage compensation after climate events. So, in our perspective, we should invert this logic and spending more in risk prevention. So these were our 5 key actions, priority actions. But our overall goal is to create a national sustainable food plan, and that's why we are doing this event today, because we defend that Portugal must adopt a national sustainable food plan to drive this so urgent transition towards a fairer, healthier, and a more sustainable food system. And why it's so essential? It's very important. This is essential to accelerate the shift that we really need to keep our pace on this. We really need to shift our production and consumption patterns also. We need to address the gaps in risk prevention, as I mentioned in the last slide. We need to enhance transparency and that data-driven policy making for a more resilient food system. And we need to promote biodiversity restoration and empower small producers to contribute to sustainable development. So now I will invite all the panelists to join me here to do a discussion about this. Now? Okay, sorry. So I will start to present our panelists. I will try to be brief, but they have a lot of experience, so I will try. So Martina Fleckenstein, she's the Global Policy Director of Food Practice at WWF, has more than 25 years of experience in national and international environment and development policy, and has many years of expertise in implementing projects related to sustainable land use and agri-food systems in different geographies. A key focus of our work is scaling up actions to transform food systems at policy and government levels and connecting them to biodiversity and climate goals. Now we have Salvador Malheiro. He's a member of the Portuguese Parliament and the chairman at the Committee on Environment and Energy. He's a mechanical engineer with a specialization in internal combustion engines and holds a PhD in energy, thermal, and combustion. He has served as professor of mechanical engineering and is an energy specialist and senior member of the Portuguese Order of Engineers. Throughout his career, he has worked as a technical expert in bioenergy for European Commission, as a technical consultant, and collaborated with the Portuguese government in the technical assessment of innovation projects focused at the exploitation of renewable resources. Now we have Francisco Carvalho. He is the General Coordinator and Innovation Lead at Landscape Laboratory at Guimarães Municipality. He's a member of the Guimarães 2030 Climate Transition Team and a guest lecturer in the Department of Biology at University of Minho. He holds a bachelor degree in applied biology, a master degree in ecology, and a PhD in molecular and environmental biology from the University of Minho, having completed part of his doctoral research at University of Washington with a Fulbright scholarship. He has worked in private sector, focusing on circular economy and sustainability, and is also been a researcher on scientific projects related to freshwater ecosystems, conservation, biodiversity, and ecosystem functioning. So, a lot of things going on. But I will start this discussion to ask Salvador. What is your perspective as a member of the parliament on the progress on these matters, on these issues that we were presenting? If you believe that the country is moving toward a transition to sustainable food system and... Oh, yeah, okay.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning for all. It's a pleasure to be here. As you have said, I'm not a guy from the food, and even from the agriculture. I'm from bioenergy. But at this moment, I work at the Parliament, and to answer directly to your question, I think that Portugal have made a significant progress during last years concerning this question. We must say that Portugal has aligned all of its agriculture policies to the European frameworks, namely common agriculture policy and also the energy green deal. And we can see at this moment in our big papers from strategy in Portugal, things like reducing pesticide, organic farming, and we have a lot of things that we have to do well, but we have a lot of things to do in the future. to say the things that we have done well. We can see this policy alignment with Europe, and we can see in our farmers a lot of renewable energy. We begin with some solutions to increase energy efficiency, to put technology in our production process, and all of this. I think it's positive, and also some programs to reduce, for example, food waste. But we have a big gap to be completely aligned with the goals of Europe. We must say that Portugal, it's a little country, but it's not homogeneous. We have different realities in our territory. We have some territories. We begin to have this kind of good process to sustainability implemented, but we have also other territories with we have huge problems, namely scarcity of water. But for me, the main problem it's the money that don't go to the farmers. And I have listened the expositions before, and I think that we must try to find new models of financement. But I think that also we must be innovative, and we must have initiative to prepare other things. And one thing that in this morning I have talked with my colleagues from the parliament in Portugal, it's, for example, to try to put the biological agriculture as a way to earn money with the carbon volunteer market. It's a question that I put to this discussion. I think that I will be time to talk another time. But in conclusion, Portugal is in the right way, but we have a lot to do, namely concerning legislative process, and we in the parliament, we are ready to do this. It exists largest consensus concerning the food, because food takes in account the three pillars of sustainability. It's not only the question of the environment, it's not the question of the people, but it's also the question of economic. And I think that Portugal is in the right way, but we must work a lot.
Thank you. Now we will talk a little bit about what is happening in a local territory. And I would like to ask Francisco, what initiatives has Guimarães undertaken in the last years to help meet national sustainable targets?
Thank you, Sophia, and thank you for the invitation to be here. There's a lot of things going on in Guimarães in the last few years, I would say, because this journey started more than 10 years ago when Guimarães aimed to have a more sustainable land for people. And now we are, for the third time running, to be European Green Capital. Next week we'll know that. And there's food systems were one of our major pillars to tackle these global challenges in terms of climate change. So how did Guimarães start to work with this puzzle, trying to join these small pieces to build a sustainable food system in the territory? So first, just to introduce the case of Guimarães, Guimarães has 30% of agricultural land in the overall city, 16% in the inner city. So even inside of the inner city, we have agricultural production. So the first thing to do was to create urban community gardens for people, and in the more urban areas, so they can produce their own food, for example. So we have now more than 10 hectares of urban community gardens in the urban area. Okay, we have very important agricultural lands that are wetlands, as well as the case of Veiga do Creixo Mill, where we have local agricultural production, and it is connected with water ecosystems, for example. And another thing that was really important was to have infrastructure as the landscape laboratory that can help to connect scientific knowledge and also to educate people towards this more sustainable food systems. So in this small projects that we've been developing, for example, there was a project that we created with the landscape laboratory 2 to 3 years ago that was called 360.com. For the ones that are that speak in English, com means to eat in Portuguese. So the idea was to create this small kit with recyclable materials made from recyclable textiles, because textile industries are very important in Guimarães, and to provide that to kids at schools. And with those kits, we were providing also seeds from micro vegetables, okay, trying to teach them how to grow their own micro vegetables. And then we had local chefs that work in very interesting restaurants in Guimarães. One of those is a Michelin star, is the first zero waste certified restaurant in Europe. And those chefs were designing some recipes for kids in schools to produce their own micro vegetables and to eat the things that they were producing. Connected with that, we were also providing to kids at schools building capacity in terms of soil biodiversity, what is under the soil, how it is important for us to improve and enhance soil biodiversity, and also to reduce our biowaste. So we were with them in canteens measuring their biowaste production after their meals. And what happened, we did that 3 times. So we did the first measurement, and then we did the building capacity with them, explaining to them that biowaste is very important to reduce our biowaste. And in the end, we were able to reduce 10% of biowaste collection with kids in schools. This is small things that you can do, building this knowledge, starting with the very young people and going to the older people, of course. Of course, that one of the things that was also related to the research part of that project was, for example, to go to the urban community gardens, collect soil samples, and see soil biodiversity and also soil chemistry to see what is the quality of the food that we are getting, and how, if they were using or not chemicals are forbidden in Guimarães. So the Guimarães was part of that without glyphosate, is a municipality without glyphosate. That is one of the most important parts. So to reduce chemicals, to reduce the pressures on our aquatic ecosystems as well. And we were also looking to the soil quality, of course, to promote this, with local farmers also, and with individual farmers, let's say, the importance of having a really good soil quality to produce really good food items, because health for us is one of the major goals. As our counselor was saying, in this big puzzle, there are these 3 major pillars are connected with the food system. So we have the social part with the community gardens, with the health that we can promote with the quality and quantity of food that we are promoting at the local level. We have also the economic part, because we have a rural-based incubator in Guimarães. So we are promoting land for young farmers that want to produce also, and to create new agricultural systems. And also, of course, the environmental part, because we are promoting sustainable strategies to promote local biodiversity. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Francisco. It was very inspiring examples. But now I would like to ask Martina if there is a national example that could serve as inspiration for Portugal.
Yeah, just some remarks on what I have heard so far. I think it's very, very encouraging to hear what you have set up on a local level. Yeah, I think that's exactly what we need, because we will never implement the SDGs or the Paris Agreement or the GBF. It will never happen at a global level. It's always at a local, and it's at a regional level. And just building the bridge between the two before I answer your question is, I think one other thing I want to flag is the soil. I think it's so important to have a stronger focus on soil health, and you mentioned carbon for the farmers, yeah? But I think this is also one of the topics we should set much more in the focus. And it's education, yeah, which we very often forgot. And it's education not only for young, but also for old people. We always learn about also from the young people. So that's on this. I think there are a lot of examples in this context on, for example, you talked about a national food plan. Canada has a very good national food plan, and there are other countries. So there is a lot of opportunities to really have these lessons learned. And what we as WWF are doing is we really bring together these kind of dialogues between member states. So at the moment we are running really in-person dialogues in different countries in the south and the north on integration of food and agriculture in the climate and the biodiversity agenda. And it's exactly this kind of exchange what we need, the lessons learned. Very often it's not that we need new things, it's more in scaling up and putting in innovative innovation, putting in IT technology. So it's exactly this kind of lessons learned, and it's a member state, but also it's within our WWF network, where we have this cross-reference. We have in the Philippines, by the way, similar projects in working with young people, with chefs, on reduction of food. So there is a lot of information available, there is a lot of knowledge. It's about sharing. At the end, it's about implementation on the ground.
Thank you, Martina. Sorry. Now, Salvador, you mentioned that a lot of things is going on, but how can we continue to support this transition? How can we continue to support the transition to sustainable food systems regarding environmental policies, laws, and support to agriculture sector in line with the European Green Deal and Paris Agreement?
Well, it's not easy to achieve this goal. It's a multi-system process. We need strong policies concerning environment, concerning agriculture, and also food. But we need effective laws. But for me, the more important it's to see this challenge as a huge opportunity. A opportunity concerning technology, concerning make money, but always put the people in the puzzle, the farmers in the puzzle. We will try to follow the good examples in the world, to kept the good suggestions of our associations. As you mentioned, I think that this national plan for the food can be a beginning of something. The example of Canada, for example, we can try to do the same. But it's a process. It's a process, but it's something that can be put also working for the people, for the economy, and I think that we have all the conditions to have also success on this.
Okay. Now, Francisco, again, in a local level, what responsibilities can municipalities have in this food transition?
Yeah. So as Martina was also saying, baseline is the education that we can do, not only for the young ones, but for the older people as well. And when we are talking about agriculture in terms of middle age in Portugal, we know that this is the sector with the highest average in terms of age that we are dealing with. And that's one of the things that we are really concerned in, grabbing agricultures together, the youngers and the olders, so the youngers, for example, can help the olders also with these new technologies, new uses of agriculture that is more sustainable, to share knowledge between the older ones and the young ones, okay, in both ways. Also, I think there's a responsibility in terms of having this integrated approach while managing our food systems. For example, we need to think about biodiversity related with food systems. In Guimarães, we are, of course, still really concerned about pollinators, for example. And in this approaches to promote corridors in the agricultural land, at the same time, for example, restoring river corridors so we can have the connection between the water ecosystem, terrestrial ecosystems, to have birds and bats that can, for example, control plagues, for example, for agriculture. So we are looking to that in an integrated manner, in an ecosystem approach. Okay, that is one of the things that we can do as a municipality. Also, one of the things that we are trying to do is to develop small financial schemes that can promote and enhance this more sustainable strategy for food systems. For example, with bio-waste collection. So in Guimarães now we have more than 12,000 users of bio-waste collection now. We have the pay-as-you-throw system in the inner area, so people pay as they produce waste. And now we have the save-as-you-recycle. So people who source bio-waste collection, they have a 50% reduction on the waste taxes. And this is a small way to enhance people and to call them to contribute to, because that is important. People are contributing to, so we need to give them something back. So we need to think in new strategies and enhance these strategies to cover, of course, all the territory. We now have half of our inhabitants that have access to bio-waste collection, but we are enhancing that in a radial manner, of course, increasing our waste collection pathways, of course. And there are small things with the green procurement also that we can do. For example, in our local market, in Guimarães, only local producers can sell products in the local market. It's a way for us to enhance these local production value chains. And one of the things that I didn't talk about as an output of that 360.com project was a small project, but with multiple outputs, was the creation of a database. This is also related with the older agricultures, for example. So what we did, our research team in the landscape lab went to the field to know the farmers, to know what they are producing. We collected that data with them, building this trust between the agricultures and also the public institutions, because someone needs to build this and to be in this gap and to connect again, to build trust between the older people and also the public system, because we know that it's also very important. So we collected data with them, what they are producing, in what quantity, in which season, which part of the year, and we are building a database so that local, for example, the restaurants in Guimarães can go to that database, select their local producers, and buy local products to enhance these local food systems. These are examples of small things that the municipalities can do, and if we sum up these puzzle pieces, I believe that we are strengthening our food system at the local scale, and we can really contribute to a global scale goal.
Thank you, Francisco. Our last question will be to Martina, and it's about what role should civil society play in this whole discussion?
Yeah, without civil society, we will not achieve the targets. And that's so important. We need this really whole of society approach. And I think your example is a very good example that it only works if you bring people on board, if you work with the people, if you work with young people, with elder people, and a civil society. And that's maybe also an advantage if you work with an organization like WWF. We could ask whatever, as we could ask also critical questions, yeah? We could really push things, we could go for agenda setting, and that's very often where civil society is more encouraging and it's more progressive than in a parliament where you also have to bring all people at the same level. So I think it's very important that all this is done in a multi-stakeholder approach. And you mentioned it, the farmers. I think that's also, if you talk about civil society, it's also we need the farmers, the one who produce, and at the same time we need the consumers. Yeah, and that's important. We should not forget the one or the other. And in this, NGOs play a role, but it's this working together, creating together this platform. And I could only encourage you to think about this national food plan, because it could be really a huge progress. And look, food is all over now. Yeah, food is in all the global agendas, and we have, at one hand, we have a food crisis. At the other hand, if we won't change our food system, and if we won't really talk about loss of biodiversity, you mentioned the example of the pollinators. you won't have the fruits and vegetables on the table. So thanks a lot also for having set up this very, very interesting discussion and panel.
Thank you. Thank you, Martina. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions, but we will be here, so you can approach us for any questions you might have. And I would like to thank first to our panelists, of course, for taking the time, and all of you for coming to this event. Thank you. Bye.